I do believe we're live. Welcome everybody to this, which is our fifth installment of the Unmasked series, presented by NTU Creative Writing, in which we're celebrating the work of writers who are in some way related to NTU, either as SOH students like Daryl and Laura Jane, a past writer in residence such as Grace, or as a current member of NIE staff like Anitha. This event specifically is to celebrate the recent publications of The Archers of Gerrard Street, White Cloud Mountain, Lovelier, Lonelier, Shanti, 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 and Flinch and Air. We thought it would be great to give the authors a chance to read, to introduce their publications, their themes, and give a short bit of context about the books. Many of the writers here have explored themes of translation, place, and kinship in the form of social relations to individuals as well as the communities around them. And we hope to be able to split this event into the first half of a reading and the second half of a Q&A. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Facebook chat and we will ask them to our writers live. The first person we have reading is Grace Chia, who is the author of 12 books, including 2 novels published this year, The Archers of Gerrard Street from Penguin Random House and White Cloud Mountain by Epigram Books, 3 poetry collections, Woman Go, Cordelia, and Mother of All Questions, as well as a short story collection, Every Moving Thing That Lives Shall Be Food. She was the inaugural NAC-NTU Writer in Residence from 2011 to 2012 and was a resident writer at Toji Cultural Centre. She has judged national poetry competitions as well as the Hawker Prize for Southeast Asian Poetry. And it's our absolute delight to get her to read this evening. So Grace, over to you.
Hi. Okay. Okay. Right. So I'm going to read an excerpt from The Archers of Gerrard Street. Can they see me? Oh, okay. Oh, they're just looking at the screen. So it's from this book, and it's actually halfway into the book, where the protagonist is sort of having a date with a guy, and this guy, Ian, how would I say? Well, she's sort of having like a she sort of is still thinking about Donald, the friend that she had something with, and who then was unfortunately murdered in London, and she's there in London basically to investigate his murder. But she has she has a little thing with this guy, and this is where I am going to be reading from. Okay, so this is Molly and Ian. All right, we start to chat. He tells me he's from Cardiff. His father is an accountant. His mother works as a clerk in a local county office. They're a typical middle-class family that lives simply, pious Anglicans mostly, while he's veered off to the agnostic route. He's the artist in the family, studying design at the Central St. Martin's. His elder sister works as a speech therapist, while his younger sister is a bank teller. He's been in London for just over a year. He loves the cultural scene here, says because he's introverted, he doesn't know many people. Kate's one of his best mates. He likes curry, if mild, coffee, if strong, and hates aubergine with a vengeance. In turn, I tell him the filtered version of me. An hour passes, then another. Preliminaries over, he cracks some jokes. We titter till our stomachs hurt. He orders another beer. I get peppermint tea. The conversation flows easily, almost too well. At some point, I turn to look at a glass roof overlooking the terrace. So very quickly, they are actually in Covent Garden. There's this underground bistro, and she's overlooking at the glass roof. It's early evening. Already the sky is changing. Pieces of clear, curved oblongs bordered by steel iron turning slowly from cerulean to lavender. I can't explain why a feeling of strange melancholy is creeping over me. Maybe it's the music playing in the background from the bistro. I recognize it as Enya. Her haunting voice washes over me like the folds of an ocean wave breaking into smithereens. I'm cradled inside the song she's singing. I recognized it from the CD album Donald had bought for me on a Christmas when I was 14. In return, I had gifted him a snow globe, which contained the Eiffel Tower. It was a nudge, a discreet hint. Paris, city of romance, of love. My infatuation with him had been undiminished through the years. It's a curse, I know. Our mutual affection not balanced in reciprocity or intensity. When Donald said the snow globe was a girly gift, I didn't disagree. I told him, one day, let's travel to Paris when we are older, when we have enough money, see the Eiffel Tower. That's when he told me about his plans to get his family to sponsor his education in the UK. Have will will travel, he declared. I persuaded him not to go down that route. It would put his family in debt. He chucked the CD into the player and started playing Enya. We were in his room. He crept into his bed and I followed after, like we had done as kids. No hanky-panky, just listening to music, staring at the ceiling, having the feels. Enya sailed us across oceans, through Gaelic seas and the Orinoco flow, the Caribbean blue, all the way to Africa while whispering Elvish. For an hour or so, we got lost on the other side of the earth as Donald shook the snow globe I had given him, and we watched the snowstorm inside a glass bubble. It seemed like a lifetime away. You all right? Ian's voice draws me back to the bistro, the present. I smile weakly at him. Ian is nice, really nice, and I'm such a mess. So that's the end of the excerpt.
Thank you so much. That was a gorgeous reading. Up next, we have Daryl, who's born in 1991. He's a writer of prose and poetry, born and raised in Singapore. He's also an arts organizer and producer and sits on the board of directors at the literary charity Singlet Station. The manuscript of his second novel, Lovelier, Lonelier, was shortlisted for the 2021 Epigam Books Fiction Prize. His other books include the novel Kappa Quartet and the novella Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Daryl, over to you.
Hello. Hi. Today I'll be reading from the novella. Oh, it sparkles! Oh my god. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And it comprises of a dozen fragments, and I'll be reading simply from the third. Okay, it's called You Are a Gift. People love to give me things. Typically, I receive things like lingerie, frilly things or things in black, things in silk. Sometimes I also receive cigarettes or lighters or snacks. Nobody thinks to give me chocolate, even though I would really appreciate it very much. Nobody gives me chocolate or flowers because to do so would turn the gift into a gesture, and gestures are for people who can indulge in meaning. But that's okay, I tell myself. I don't need it. And so what do I do when a guy suddenly offers me a flat to stay in a condo on a hill at Mount Faber? He said to me, there's an entire view of the world waiting just for you in the bedroom, a thing that meant a lot to me at the time. All my life, the only bedroom I knew was a room with no windows, just walls. On my ceiling was a mural of a blue sky dotted with clouds, which my father had paid a friend of his to do. It was the first thing that came to mind when my guy made his proposal, and I said, yes, thank you. I would love to live on this hill at Mount Faber. It was the first time I'd used the word that way, love. And not in the way I usually say it when I say something like, yes, daddy, I love you, or your little girl loves you. The love I offered this man instead was pure and simple, and it had nothing to do with him, and that was fine too. It's not a love that's easy to misunderstand. On this hill at Mount Faber, my flat is a 3-bedroom setup with minimal furniture. I have a sofa in the living room and a coffee table on a green-colored rug. I have a television as well, the kind that is so large it curves. The floors are white marble tile, which are cool in the evenings. In the living room, the windows are much larger than the ones in any of the bedrooms, and so it is here where I sleep, not there. I sleep on the couch with the windows wide open and the fan blowing against me. I sleep without any clothes on and just a cushion beneath my head and neck. I also sleep with a little incense burning in a corner, and while I used it at first to keep the mosquitoes away, now I burn it because it is a part of me, my life. This is the smell I get to think of when I think of me. And when my guy comes over, when he pays me a visit, I oblige him, and I am glad to do so. I show him what it means to have a life suddenly feel whole and complete. And when I am done, when we are done, I do what I like to do the most, and he joins me. I open my laptop on the coffee table and have it hooked up to the TV set. And then I open my list of contacts, the list of men and women who pay for my services. I look up their addresses on Google Maps, and first I go on satellite view and then on street view. And then I spend ages and ages circling around their houses, their neighborhoods, becoming familiar with their streets and their lanes and any adjoining avenues. And my guy, he just sits behind me on the couch and watches me click away, wandering about in the broad daylight that is Google Maps' version of our world, while in reality, the both of us are still naked. The floor is cold against my skin, and it is dark in a way that the light from the television easily conquers. To me, it's very much like a portal into another universe. It remains wide open to me, like an invitation. Ever since news broke of our living arrangement, I've taken to going on Google Maps to look at the other address my guy had given me. He told me that this is where he lives with his wife and that I can go there if I am ever in an emergency. I typed the address in and up comes this view of a house, split cleanly down the middle into two semi-detached units. The unit that belongs to him, number 366, is 2 stories tall with a dark and dirty gray facade, while the neighboring unit on the right, number 364, is 3 stories tall and perfectly white and clean. The view into the rooms of number 366 is half obscured by potted ferns and bushes and trees that flourish on the balcony and garden, while the rooms of 364 appear perfectly exposed, necessitating the drawing of curtains. Needless to say, I'm captivated. I wonder if this is where my guy really lives, or he has just given me a fake address. The news story doesn't concern me, nor the ongoing investigation. The police can bring me in for questioning and demand whatever information I have on my guy. I can give it all up. I can tell them whatever they want to hear about him. All I want to know is who actually lives in this house that's been split into 2. I want to walk through all their different rooms and sleep on their different couches and imagine how their beds and toilets and kitchens must look, all compared to one another. If there is any good I can do in the world, I want to be able to look at the lives of these other people and present it to those who are curious, just curious, to see the many things and places that pertain to keep them and house them and provide shelter for them. If there's anything I want to do, it is to show people this black and white house, numbers 366 and 364, and how its inhabitants have chosen to divide all that space between themselves in that manner. And so when I suddenly receive a phone call from a woman demanding to know who I am and what I'm doing, saying that she is in fact my guy's wife and that she would like to meet me tonight, right now, I go on Google Maps and ask for her address. And when the address she gives me so happens to belong to number 364, the one on the right with the white paint and the clean lines, I abandon everything. And I say, yes, okay, I'll come meet you. I'll grab a taxi and see you soon. All right, she later says, thank you. Let me know how much it costs and I'll cover your fare. Another gift. And so it is 4:30 in the morning and I'm at the foot of my block waiting for my taxi. I'm going to see my sugar daddy's wife, which would make her more or less my sugar mommy. And just the phrase alone makes me want to giggle, even though I'm shivering, I'm shaking. My body's shaking and I don't know if it's because I'm nervous or because I'm excited or because it's just especially cold all of a sudden. I'm reminded of the first couple of times I went to the houses of other men and other women in the middle of the night and how I was shaking the way I am shaking now, my body overcome by little tremors working their way along my nerves, my muscles, my bones. I can't recall the last time I even left this flat of mine on this hill at the middle of Mount Faber. And as I try to bring up that particular memory, I am distracted by the kiss of something icy landing on the edge of my top lip. I gasp and I touch it, the little shard of frost that had melted from the warmth of my skin. I look up into the sky and see more of them, more of these little shards, and it's amazing, just amazing. I ask the world what else it has to offer, really, to someone who has nothing but a self to give in return. I fall short of being demanding. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. It's always like the loveliest delight to listen to you read. Okay, up next we have Laura Jane Lee, who is a poet from Hong Kong, currently based in Singapore. Under her former name, she founded Kongparimo, Subtle Asian Poetry Collective, and is the winner of the Sir Roger Newdigate Prize. Her work has been awarded in various international competitions, such as the Oxford Brookes International Poetry Competition, Outspoken Poetry Prize, and the Poetry London Mentorship Scheme. She's been published in journals and newspapers such as ORB, HKFP, HKO1, QLRS, and the Mekong Review. Her pamphlets include Chong Yu Chinoiserie from Hedgehog Press in 2020, published under her former name, and the wonderful publication I think we're going to hear from tonight, which is Flinchinger, which was published by Outspoken Press just last week. So congratulations, over to you.
Thank you, Kat. So hi everyone, I'm Laura Jane, and I'll be reading, if I'm correct, 5 poems today. So the first one is Yet to Be. It's in the first section of the book called Lo Ya, which the radicals, the components of this character come together to form the character Ta. So it means her in Chinese. And the poem is called Yet to Be. It's for my best friend June. Those years we two were flies in syrup, plastered face up, face down, glowing like the rain, or else the pavement under which we brace in conch shells, our bones silent under skins, ever so hungry for contact, for crying out loud and kissing lovers, dying lovers, burning all around, the air is thinning to a halt in the looking glass. And I would explain in not so many words, as you prepare it to break again, as we were not yet titled, we were not even close. But that night, you'd bend and again, and bend and again, and I'd take a cue from the real world and internalize my externalities, then know we both were miles away from being the sun. Those boys with soft lips and eyes searing all those years when we too were flies in syrup, digging our insides clean, and I'd hurt for your faults and not my sins, and know nothing we could say to each other would make any sound, but at least we lived, my love, at least we survived. So that's the first poem. The second poem is the titular poem of this pamphlet. It's called Flinchinger. Yeah, it's a very random poem. I wrote it after the virtual launch of Margaret Atwood's collection, Dearly. Flinchinger. Woke up wanting to kiss you, in teeth brushing and fingernail, in batwing and sleep, under wanting to drink you, beneath flinch and air, between hypnotism and spake. I am between language and I am amphibious, within thick and pocket, but your spend and your disappoint, to exist and that thereof. What if I just want to complicate you, with radio, with mouth, for best or for worst, mine, to tonic and to lip, what to have and what to hold. The next poem is sort of a palindrome. So it's great that we can see it on screen because I think it works much better that way. It's after Caroline Bird's Drawn Onward. Okay, Drawn Downward. At some point, you might decide to love me at all and find it entirely incorrigible to even backtrack upwards into the spectrum of visible light. Most will recommend that for safety at a bullet stretch, you must follow the signage of the breadcrumb trails. They do not last quite long enough for sustenance, but they never lie. So you might as well assume my intentions being solid enough to wrap your knuckles on, and that the sky being right side down, my hollows would float like an antithesis to what I am really made of. This terrible texture that will float like an antithesis to the sky being right side down, my hollows being solid enough to wrap your knuckles on, and that you might as well assume my intentions do not last quite long enough for sustenance, but they never lie. So follow the signage of the breadcrumb trails. They will recommend for safety at the bullet stretch, you must backtrack upwards into the spectrum of visible light. Most find it entirely incorrigible to even decide to love me at all, and at some point you might. So that's the third poem. The fourth one is The Summer Critter Speaks Not of Frost. So this was the one that was awarded the Sir Roger Newdigate Prize. The Summer Critter Speaks Not of Frost. 夏蟲不可語冰. Do not trespass with perhaps. Do not ponder why the brief critter sheds its days like that. That summer is more of a reprieve than trapping home. That it will try and not find the word for frost. That it does not know at all that the world can stay colder than fire, which is torrid, that you can even drown in the intolerable light. In its dreams, white is a figment, and melting is but a tributary of perishable air. I will be lost. I will be impossible. Spent like an envelope singing my eyes shut, always forgetting, always. This duet, a starved type of blue. And the last one is it's a bit of a long one. It's The Days of the Dog, and it's a pastiche of The Year of the Kiss by Reed Mitchell for DRG. Those were the days that the dog was in charge. Sever us all, and there were always dogs in charge. Added snow after snow to perennial night, with no smothering until heavy, so that the days never ended, so I always woke up the same time tomorrow, as there were soundtracks yet to die to, until February till April became the dizziest on record, and the highest purge rate the body had borne since the day you went stir crazy. And still, you tried to pry open your unplugged mouth to get the last bits of food out, and still thought you would be in love with him always, and that he deserved not only to be forgiven, but to be cherished tenderly and let walk all over you. Those were the climes in which bathroom tiles were heated, cried on, and scrubbed with raw hands, so that you could go to sleep in peace in your blue coffin bed, sitting by the laboratory window watching it rain gray onto the water, the spot you decided that biologically speaking, if you stopped eating, all of you would become hunger, and there would be no ghosts, so you may, for sanity's sake, lock yourself in the library, sleep on scratchy hall seats unfolded with fingers, emptying yourself completely in a warm-lit bathroom stall, as salty and bloody as love, as grief, for those were the days your heart had no choice but to stop. Those were the days of the dog, which days could never be worse than and will always be. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to hear you read from this collection. And last but certainly not least, we have Anitha Devi Pillai. She's a Singaporean writer, translator, and poet. She's authored and edited creative and non-creative fiction books, as well as translated a historical fiction novel, Sembawang, a novel from Tamil into English. She also loves writing poetry, and some of her poems have made their way into the classrooms in Singapore, India, Australia, and the Philippines. In a parallel life, she's an applied linguist and a teacher-educator at the National Institute of Education in Nanyang Technological University, Singapore, where she teaches courses on various forms of writing and trains English language teachers to teach writing. So thank you so much for reading for us. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be reading from Sembawang, the novel that I translated. The novel that I translated was written by my mom, actually, and we'll talk about that later. So this is the opening scene, yeah, the opening scene, and at this point in time, the characters are in Malaya, in a rubber estate in Malaya. The movie van is here. The movie van is here. The air was filled with voices of squealing young children and teenagers. The boys ran after the van, which drove through the narrow lanes of their estates. The huge speakers announced the arrival of the movie for the night. Karliamma was irritated. She had walked home with a heavy heart after a long day of work. Karani Appudure had yelled at her for a slight oversight at work. She knew that she should not worry herself unnecessarily about being scolded by the Karani. After all, he was just a rubber tapper. She was just a rubber tapper. To add fuel to the fire burning in her heart, she spotted her son running up to the movie van with one hand holding on to his loose suluva. He must have just returned from school. His homework lay untouched at home. She knew that her son would only return home after watching the movie in the open space under the night dew. He could not have eaten anything yet. Carly knew the routine. On the days when the movie van came into the estate, her son would disappear for a few hours. She would have to go in search of him, cajole him to return home and have his dinner. Even when she was successful in getting him to return, all he would do was to gobble down a few mouthfuls of rice and dash off into the field. Today, it didn't look like she would have any luck in dragging him back for dinner. Carly sighed and went in search of a little boy in the open space where the movie was being shown with his dinner in hand. A family planning advertisement was running. She sat down to feed him. When she returned, Munusami too walked into their home. As usual, the man was reeking of toddy. Like his son, he too hurriedly ate his dinner and promptly fell asleep. It is only now that Kali could do the odd jobs around the home. She set out to wash the dirty dishes in a pail of water outside her home. She noticed that at the edge of the earthen pot, was chipped. Goodness, now this too. She refilled the pail with a generous amount of water and picked up the dirty clothes that they had worn that day. Her Kylie and blouse, Munisami's silhouette and shirt, and Tarasu's clothes. She hit them against the washpot, willing the dirt out of them. She then soaked the clothes again in the pail of water, pulled them up, and twisted them tightly to get rid of the water from the clothes. She flicked off the water from the wet clothes gingerly before draping them across the metal strings strung across the metal laundry poles. A searing, sharp pain on her back made her pause. Someone had thrown a stone at her. Won't you leave me alone today either? Her angry outburst was laced with a tinge of shyness. Calming her racing heart, she continued to drape the wet clothes. Another stone fell on her back. She refused to turn around. The whole estate was at the open space watching the movie. There was not a soul inside, on the street. The night was lit by the night lamp in her kusini and the sky. Chandran emerged from the shadows of the estate, dressed in a short-sleeved t-shirt and a half-pant silhouette. She continued to ignore him. The next moment, it happened. The false anger melted away. Half an hour later, they both slowly emerged from the back of the chicken coop. She flicked the dirt off her Kylie. Kali, won't you think about what I have told you? Pleaded Chandran softly. She was irritated. Give me 2 days. I'll tell you later. Now go. She sent him away. Chandran did not want to leave. As Chandran moved away half-heartedly, Kali stood rooted to the ground. What am I going to do when I go into the house anyway? Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. We're now moving into like the kind of Q&A section of this reading, and I love having all of these books together. I think they talk to place as a kind of site that we respond to really interestingly, and how that comes into kind of like how it bumps up against other things like genre, form, and voice. And I wondered if I could start with you, Grace. I really wanted to ask, was it important to you that The Archers of Gerrard Street was classed as a Bildungsroman rather than a murder mystery or a romance novel?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good question because I'm not really sure how to pitch the genre when I was approaching publishers. All I know is that there is a protagonist and she had to do something. She is and was in love with this guy from her childhood. She's from small town in Malaysia, Batu Pahat, and so is this guy Donald. And I basically, in my mind, when I was structuring the narrative, I needed her to go from A to B. So from A, that's Malaysia, and then she goes to London. By then, she knows he's dead. I mean, he's been murdered, and that's all they know. And basically, by getting from A to B, she will sort of know some of the answers, but not everything, because that's the reason why the whole novel is about, because it's hard to find out exactly what happens when no one really wants to tell you the truth. So for her to go from A to B, she sort of has to grow up, in my mind, because I'm not really writing a thriller or a detective novel. That wasn't the aim. I just wanted her to find out the truth about something and then find out about herself. So it was really for her to get to grow up, in a sense, by going through this emotional and physical journey. So the romance element comes in because she obviously still is, besotted over the guy that died. He treated her a little bit badly, as most first loves do. And then I wanted to complicate matters by having her meet somebody who is a little bit nicer to her, and that's this guy in London, Ian. He just happens to be a white guy. I had this discussion. It just so happens that because he went to London to investigate, he met this guy who is actually a friend of a tenant, and so therefore the romance element came in because I thought that she shouldn't just be pining over the guy who treated her badly. She should sort of move on. And so I wanted a sort of a romantic closure to that. And then the whodunit came about because she has to solve something. So basically I wanted her to do something. I wanted the obstacles and I wanted her to sort of have a closure at the end of it. Yeah. And when I pitched it to publishers as well as Penguin, I guess they saw it as a sort of a pan-Asian novel where it goes through different cities, including Singapore and Hong Kong. And yeah, they said it's a whodunit. And for me, for some reason, I never thought about it as a whodunit, but I thought, yeah, actually it is, because there's a crime, right? She has to solve it, yeah. And the romance elements was something that I started this novel about 17 years ago. I was much younger then. So I guess I was in a more romantic mood then. And so therefore the romance element crept in. So in a way it weaved different things I wanted to do. And therefore it is what it is. So I really don't know which genre it should go into the bookshelf, because my editor at Penguin said that, yeah, this is actually a romance novel. I'm like, no, really? Okay, so yeah, it's really mixed genres. When you write a story. You don't think about genres. You just write the story you want to tell, and this is the story I want to tell. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, genuinely, I was so curious about that relationship to genre. I'd love to hear you say a little bit more about the ways in which place can affect imagination. Like from reading some of the interviews you've done, you've held so many interesting jobs during your time in London. A working holidaymaker was like a job that I didn't even know existed until fairly recently. How did these impact the experience of a Singaporean identity while you were in London? And out of curiosity, did these experiences possibly impact the way you wrote the book?
Yeah. Okay. So after I had my first job following after graduating from NUS, I had one. I decided to backpack in London and then different parts of Europe, and to sort of discover myself, and met the guy who now is my husband, and then we have this journey with him. And when I was in London, I had, because obviously being Chinese and the UK is predominantly white, I always felt oddly, I didn't feel at ease in my adopted city. So I wanted to write about that, what it means to be yellow in a white country. That was it. That was the premise. So I wanted an Asian character in a setting which I was familiar with, because by then I was there in like 5, 6, 7 years in London, and I sort of knew this setting that was not Singapore. And so I decided to, so obviously there was no murder in my life. I'm not Molly at all. I'm not from Batu Pahat, but I decided to weave, I like to make landscape a character in most of my writing. Actually, a lot of my writing, I like to flesh out the setting as realistic as possible, because it is part of, it leaves an impression on us. It basically embeds into our skin the more we live, wherever we live. Everywhere we go, we bring it along with us. It creeps into us. London was very much weaved into my soul, my thinking. I felt like a Londoner when I was there, so I had to write a book about London. Yes, and then so that was the reason why it was set in London, and I needed a fictional narrative so that it's not just about me, because I don't want to write about me. And then the next thing where you're mentioning about, I think it's about White Cloud Mountain, and that was in South Korea. And I apart from spending a month in South Korea, I spent actually quite several months there previously. And But this time, when I was in Gwangju, it was in the mountains and it was for a writing residency. Gosh, that place was so magical. I don't know. I mean, I was in a very bad state emotionally. I was like a zombie. When I went there, it's sort of like just, mountain magic. So I was like, I didn't intend to write about that, but for some reason I decided to pay tribute to this. So I guess in a way, a lot of my writing is my little time capsules of the time I spent in a place that made a deep impression on me. But I don't really want to write in a non-fiction way. And I sort of like to make stories out of the setting, which are real. So this is sort of my way of trying to, pay tribute as well as it's a love letter to the places I've lived, essentially.
That's such a lovely way of putting it. I think Love draws us quite nicely into like Daryl's books and especially Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And I really wanted to know what on earth drew you towards the Great Comet of like 1996? Like why that specifically?
Right. So the Great Comet of 1996 is quite a major plot point in my second novel, Love There, Alone There. And I chose it for a number of reasons. I'm a writer who tends to dabble a lot in magical realism, and what that really means is that I am very, very interested in the very, very fine space between what we think of as real and what we can think of as imagined or reimagined. And I was drawn to comets, first of all, because obviously there's the myth, right? When the comet comes, strange things will happen. And that's what people used to believe in. It's a superstition that I don't think anybody holds anymore. But I thought it would be a kind of nice opportunity to have sort of several hijinks happen in the book. Another thing about comets in general that I was really drawn to was the fact that they tend to follow cycles that, in a sense, like they would re-enter the solar system after an incredible amount of time. So in the case of the comet Hyakutake, the Great Comet 1996, I think it was projected that the comet would return in 65,000 years. And the biggest question I had then was, what if it did? And what happened if it got a bit too close to us? So that was a big thing that kind of like set off a lot of other things in my brain for the book. And out of all the great comets that we have in our time, I think Hyakutake is kind of interesting because it was quickly overshadowed by the great comet of the following year, the Hale-Bopp. But what was really lovely about Hyakutake is that it was discovered by this Japanese amateur just taking out his binoculars like in like the southern part of Japan, and he discovered it, which is why it was named after him. But another great thing about Hyakutake, I was going to say beautiful, but it's not, is that when the book opens, it's in 96 when the comet's passing over, and I needed a kind of event to kind of mark more or less a year after the occurrence of the Kobe earthquake in 95, which one of my characters is going through. So in terms of both themes and the practicalities of plot and character, it was Komi Hyakutake that just kind of fell very, 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 very neatly and beautifully into the real schema of things. And yeah, that's why I chose it ultimately, yes.
Like I genuinely think like it's such a lovely kind of like way to organize a novel, just like an instant moment of like visible light. Do you remember the Hyakutake comet?
No, I remembered neither comets. I think I was like, what? Oh my God, how old was I? 6, 7 when both comets happened, and my parents were not culturally inclined, let alone galactically inclined. Like they were not those kinds of parents, you know. So yeah, it just kind of happened like without any like all these things I discovered were really a product of research. You know, just going into newspaper archives and realizing all these different things that happened, and also discovering that the Singapore Science Centre had also organized a night for everyone to kind of gather around to watch Komi Hyakutake 96, which again was a very beautiful another like history going like, you can use this in your plot. And I did. Yeah, so it was really great. I think, yeah, I really can't say that I've had a personal experience of these things, but they were definitely very rich in terms of being able to kind of really craft a story around that time period. Yeah.
Does that mean you as a writer are like cosmically inclined?
Yes. I'm all about confusing coincidence with providence. I'm all about that. Like allowing or having a thing happen to you and thinking, oh, this isn't a product of randomness. This has to be a sign of something larger at work that we cannot like conceive of or fathom. And yeah, that's always a very delicious thing for me to explore as a writer. So yes.
I think like snowfall in Singapore just like encapsulates that perfectly. Like did it really snow?
No, of course not, Kat.
I googled it and like there are videos of like people that have slowed down rain and it just looks like a freak instance of snowfall.
No.
I was like, wait, really? It's like,
But,
no, but wait.
Now we're talking about this book. Oh my god. Oh, gorgeous. Can I just do this like a YouTuber? Anyway, the book was really inspired by a separate incident. Obviously, I think 2013, like the haze crisis in Singapore was really bad. And then it hailed in the west part of Singapore, which was again like miraculous. Like we thought like it was already like crazy that it was like the skies were orange and the PSI was so bad that we had to stay at home. Like it's just another crazy instances of the world being so strange, and then it hailed on top of everything else that happened. And I remember like there was this beautiful clip, this newspaper clip, not a newspaper clip, it was I think a CNA or Channel 5 news interview, and they interviewed a woman who like said something so iconic that it became remixed on YouTube. Like it was just this beautiful random moment in history here that was like really come and go, you know, but that definitely inspired the strictly fictional events that take place in this book, Cat. Yeah, but also like going back to the idea of it snowing in Singapore in the first place. Obviously, it's an impossibility, right? We all know we're so used to the fact that, you know, it either rains or shines here. And I'm always, as a writer, obviously, I'm always on the lookout for things that could be wondrous or miraculous or could allow us to kind of take a step out of our reality. And having it snow for very random 4 minutes when hardly anyone would be awake at the same time, I think that was a good opportunity to really put my characters kind of through this little test to see how it would affect them and stuff like that. Yeah.
I think my last question for you is within Shanti, I know that the writing centre is around 12 individuals. And how did you know when you'd found like 12 distinct voices? Like how did you know when you like decided on the number of people that the novel was going to include?
Oh man, that's a very good question. And I could say something really complicated and woo-woo, but really it really boils down to practicalities. In a sense that I knew the book was going to be a book of fragments, right? Like these little sharp vignettes. And I was debating within myself, how many of those fragments should there be, right? Like I was like thinking like 6, is that too little? And then 20, is that too much? And I just felt like a dozen felt really, really manageable. There's also the internal structure of the book is organized around these pairs, right? So in a sense that the first chapter is paired with the 12th, the second with the 11th, the third with the 10th, so on and so forth. So on top of having a dozen fragments, I had 6 pairs really to manage, which again felt reasonable to me as a writer who obviously didn't want those pairs to just simply be pairs, but to also kind of form little interconnections throughout the entire kind of schema of things. So I just felt like a dozen would be good. And then after I had settled on the number, I had to ask myself, what kinds of individuals did I want to kind of feature, right? Across the 12 fragments. And that was when I really told myself that I think in a book featuring an event that would take place across Singapore, I really wanted to kind of represent a real swath of experience. And not just experience, but also kinds of people who could be in Singapore. So the book really features people of all races, of all backgrounds, people who are just travelers, people who are just about to go, people who are coming, and that kind of thing. And I just really wanted to really show the kinds of people who could exist in our society that maybe aren't really featured so prominently in Singlet, you know? And people who are more than what they seem on the surface, people with their own dreams and their own desires. And the passage I just read, she's a sex worker. Let's not gloss over that, but it's important that, you know, a person like that isn't just reduced to what she does, but also really valued for what she thinks, what she aspires to, what she fancies, you know, in a very real un-PC way, you know, like there's just a humanness, and that was a really delicious thing for me to explore, really. So yeah. So that's how I settled eventually on the dozen that we see here. Yes.
Thank you. I think, like, on a matter of interconnection, Laura Jane, can I get you to talk about that cover? It's gorgeous. Like, it's so pretty. I was just staring at it while you were reading.
Yes, I was just thinking about Daryl's comet, and yes, this is this on the right side? I hope it is. Okay, this is the orbit. I didn't choose it. My publisher chose it, but I think it speaks to different people in different ways. So actually, this is the orbit of a NASA satellite. It's called Artemis. It was the first satellite that NASA sent into space that didn't orbit around like a planet or like any like entity. So basically, it used the gravity of the Earth and the Moon to orbit around a location that didn't exist. So it was called the first like Earth Moon Librator. So essentially, it just orbited like a virtual location, right? So this nice little orbit we see here, I think for me, when I looked at it, my publisher told me, you know, cover reveal, this is what we chose for you. I got to choose the color. I chose blue. And for me, when I was looking at this, I felt it looked like a conch shell, like the very bottom of it. Because I think a lot of the poems in my book, I write a lot about like water, the sea. So like, spoiler, I talk about my grandma, and she married my grandpa, who was a sailor. And also there's a lot of like imagery of like water, sea, that kind of thing. But also I think my father, who is a doctor, when he looked at this, he told me it looked like a spine. So he felt like the moons looked like the vertebrae, I guess, of the spine. And then the thing at the bottom, he said, looked like a pelvis to him. So I felt like it was really like this moment that I realized even this cover, it speaks to different people in different ways. Like different people look at it and see different things. And I felt like that was a very fitting analogy for like poems, right? Because everyone reads a poem and reads it in a different way. For example, the first poem, Yet to Be, I had it workshopped when I was briefly studying at Goldsmiths, and I didn't include the dedication, so not to my friend June. All the people in the workshop were like, what is happening? Who is she writing to? And like, are they lovers? Was this like a relationship that has expired? They didn't know really what to make of it. And to be honest, I don't think anyone would know what to make of it other than my best friend. But I think, even though, it has a very special meaning for me and my best friend, I think most people who read it might get like something different out of it that speaks to them. And I think that's, really the great thing about poetry. It speaks to different people in different ways. Yeah.
It seems like that's like such a good analogy. It's kind of like an orbit of virtual places. I just wanted to ask, do you think that the collection revolves or like holds a particular gravity around either a specific virtual place or places?
I think virtual places, perhaps like maybe like emotional states or states of mind, but it does also talk about a lot of different like physical, geographical places. For example, it talks about my grandma. She was born in Zhuhai, which is a very small Domen district, basically a very small farming village in China. And then it talks about the curator of Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum. So she is Singapore's Woman of the Year, and she was from a village in Malaysia, so that's Singapore. And then we also have Lee Mei, who moved to Hong Kong to get married. And we have me. I had a brief stint studying in Norway. So the poem The Days of the Dog was about my time in Norway, a very isolated village. The nearest convenience store was 30 minutes by bike, and the nearest supermarket was 1 hour, and the nearest town, like city town, was 5 hours by bus. So it was very isolated and sort of like made me quite depressed. But I guess, yeah, there are many like physical places that are embedded into this book. Obviously, like the last portion, Mothering the Land, is about Hong Kong. But yeah, I think other than geographical places, like physical places, it also brings you through like many different mental states, emotional states, not just mine, but obviously because it talks about many different Asian women, we experience their emotions or their experience, vicariously somehow as well. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that tie to place would also be like a really good connection to Sembawang. Anita, like you translated this from, obviously, like as you mentioned earlier, you translated this as a book that was written by your mother.
Yeah.
What was that like?
There were many challenging moments, because I was also talking to her about the story, right? I'm like, why does this character do this? And you see, the thing is, it wasn't a published manuscript. I told her to hang on until I had a look at it, and we wanted it to come out at the same time. So, which meant that as I was going through this, I went through the story first, and then we had long discussions about the story. So it's quite an unusual translation experience, and I'm quite aware of that. So we talked about things, and then I also did, what I did was she had referred to a lot of it's a historical fiction. So she had referred to a lot of facts and a lot of events that actually took place, right? So the researcher in me couldn't help it. And I said, no, hang on, let me just understand what happened. So I would go and dig up, newspaper articles, and, I would go through all the archives and go through details, and then map that out, and then write that up, and then come back to her and then said, okay, this is happening and this is what it is. So it was a very unusual translation experience. So in that process, there were little changes that were made to the text, the main text itself, in the original text, So as we were looking through the details, and so it was a very unusual experience because I'm working with someone else's text. And I think if I were to translate it, this is my first translation project. So if I were to translate someone else's project, it's usually something that's published, right? You're constrained by so many things. So I think I had a little bit more freedom in that way. And I was able to talk to the author. I was able to, it was a very healthy conversation with a lot of loud arguments. And like, why is she doing this? How could she do that? Why is she going there? And then, so, that sort of, it's like, I don't have to justify my character to you. So we had such a lot of interesting conversations, but that also made me understand, the writer doesn't say so much, right? And I didn't have to second guess. I think I was privileged that way, because she would explain, oh, this is happening in this instance because of this. And she would, so we went back and forth with the content. So that was, I thought it was it's an unusual and privileged position to be in when I try, translating Sembawang. Yeah.
It sounds like such a holistic practice rather than just like a line by line kind of literal movement from one language into another, as much as that is or isn't possible.
I actually did that too.
Oh my goodness.
So that is the first stage, right? So she finished it, and it took at least 2 years before I was able to get the final version out, because so once we did the research, once we ran through the content, and then talked about the different characters, and then and meanwhile, what I was doing, I was writing up the characters, and because there were so many characters, I needed to make sense of it. So I was writing up all the characters, who they are to each other. Then I was working with all the words, the glossary. And then, so I did all of that because the Tamil used in this book, there's a lot of colloquial words. There were a lot of words that were used in the 60s and 70s that we no longer use as much. Things like kusani, it is used in some, very few people use it now. The older generation does. Those who lived in some of these kampongs do. So like suluwar is still used, and it's used in the pronunciation of the word itself is it's a very Indianized pronunciation, of pants. So there were certain words that were used that I wasn't familiar with, alluru and all that, referring to this big drains and all that. So all of that needed to be documented. I felt that I needed to understand the text, so I documented that first. And then I thought, okay, I need some detachment. I need to do this right. So then I went line by line. Now, so I worked with the verbs. Because it was so many things were happening in the same sentence, and I was trying to figure out, I need a formula for this, something that works. So I worked with the verbs. I went, and there were 2-3 verbs sometimes, and very often in this book. And I picked up the verbs, and then I wrote the sentence. So line by line, I broke it down. And then I went back to it paragraph by paragraph, chapter by chapter, and rewrote it. So I did ask my mom for permission here. I said, if I do it line by line, things are not working. They don't seem to read as fluidly it doesn't seem to work in English. And I understand, translation doesn't, there are some things about translation you've got to take note of, and you've got to bring that to life, right? And mom says, do whatever you need to do, just make it readable, make it a pleasure to read by when someone picks it up and reads it in English. So then since I had that creative freedom, I was able to rework each paragraph and ensure that the meaning was kept intact. And it's a long novel, so I had to go back to her chapter by chapter, hours of sitting down with her and saying, I've got this. I make these slight changes because the metaphors, I've got to add in a bit more information. It's no longer line by line. Is that okay? Did I get it right? And I think no one language can capture another language nuances, right? So it was fun. I love languages and I love Tamil. So it was particularly a pleasure to work with, and a challenge because it would keep me up at night, trying to figure out the words. And yeah, so I did do line by line, but then I stepped away. So the first draft was line by line, and the first 2 drafts were line by line. Yeah, then it no longer is. So it's more of a transcreation, I would say. Yeah.
And
it took forever.
Oh God, it sounds like such a process. Oh my goodness.
It took forever. 2 years.
I do have to ask, has this project changed the way in which you view Sembawang as a place?
It has. So it's a place that's very close to my heart because my paternal family, when they arrived in Singapore, that's where they went and that's where they lived. And the connections we have, the extended connections we have with the community, it's we all from Sembawang. That we say that all the time. I don't know about the other locations in Singapore, but there's this very strong connection about being from Sembawang, or at least in my family. I hear it in my community of Fabit. And I know the historical facts, of course. I know, Minister Mentor's speech at Sri Narayana Machine and things that we're very proud of, and all the little things that happened at the naval base. And so I know of all of that, but this has made Sembawang even closer to my heart because I see it from the lives of people. It's not just the connections, it's not just the network, but they all had lives. They fell in love. So many things happened, right? I mean, they fell in love. There was not murder, but there were things that happened. There was catastrophes that happened. And it made it. The story somehow made it. I relate to it at a different level. It's not just an emotional level. It's not just because my family's from there, and I still think, oh, I'm a Sembawang girl. But there's this connection of, it's such rich history and so many rich stories. Yeah.
Sounds incredible, and I cannot wait to read it. Unless we have any questions, I do believe we're almost out of time. So unless there are any like desperate questions in the chat that pop up in the next like couple of seconds, I do believe I might leave it there. I do owe a massive thank you to NTU's School of Humanities and the NTU Creative Writing Centre, as well as the Asian Creative Writing Programme, to all of our readers who have joined me here today, as well as to Kalisha Wan and John Gresham, who made this wonderful event possible. For those interested in creative writing, there is currently an ongoing collaboration between NTU and the National Arts Council, who have created the Asian Creative Writing Programme. They offer online courses this year and have more exciting things planned for 2022. If you're interested in poetry, you can currently apply for Mary Jean Chan's course. Registration closes next Friday, and we do certainly hope to do another one of these events soon too. So thank you for joining us. I hope you'll have a very lovely evening. Thank you again to all our readers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.